guys who know something, Teddy, we give a lot of love here on Mark Rogers TV to the offensive linemen. Nobody else hardly does, because these are the guys that make it all happen. And even with defensive stats and metrics, we can kind of identify with even defensive players and say, this guy's got this many tackles, this many sacks, tackles for loss, picks, and now with the advanced metrics, hurries, and all this other stuff. But offensive linemen, yes, if you're really going to dig into the grind through the metrics, you can. There are offensive line stats out there now, but we just don't give these guys much attention because, you know, we can't attach a statistic to them, but they make it all happen. So your impressions from what happened at the combine today with the offensive linemen?
Quintin Nelson showed up. That's for sure. He beasted it out. And you're right. I got to say real quick, the offensive linemen don't get enough love. They really don't. We've had a couple offensive linemen on our show call in, and, you know, it's a battle in the trenches between the D-line and O-line, and they've talked about it before. I mean, we've had Jonathan Wells, former Buckeye running back, on the show as well. He always told us he wants straight dogs to block for him. He wants guys that get after it and, you know, are going to battle for him. And those guys do one heck of a job. And you're right. It's only recent years that we really have the pancakes and no sacks allowed stats, if you will. But yeah, again, Quintin Nelson, he put up a heck of a combine showing. Unfortunately for Orlando Brown, I'm very disappointed. He's about 6'8", 360 pounds. He was on my radar. I actually had it on the show last week to where I was very intrigued to see how he does this combine showing, and he disappointed me a lot. 14 bench reps, ran like a 5.86, a 40-yard dash. Doesn't matter a whole lot for the offensive lineman, but still just shows that, you know, he's not athletic as you would like him to be. The strength isn't there. There's a lot of question marks on him, and he was supposed to be a potential first-round draft pick.
We've got Teddy the Bear Tate on the line. You can catch him on Straight Football Talk on the Totally Driven Entertainment Network there. Teddy, do we have any correlation to what happens at the combine and what happens at the NFL draft, and more importantly, how these players produce? So this is always my thought about the combine. It's fun to watch. I like to see what happens, and certain guys obviously are great college football players and they just don't turn out in the NFL. Then there's other guys that obviously there aren't guys that sit at the end of the bench in college and turn out to be superstars, but kind of guys that just didn't break out in college. They were marginal players. They were decent. They were impact players. For whatever reason, they get into the right situation. They mature. Things happen differently for them, and they ball out in the NFL. How much of what we see in these combine workouts do you think truly translates versus what we saw for 4 years or 3 years with these guys on the game tape?
I'll be honest with you. I think some of them, it does translate. However, when I look at a prospect, the best example I can give you is when Teddy Bridgewater was drafted. All the quarterbacks that was drafted in that draft class, I said by far, Teddy Bridgewater was my favorite. You look at his production at Louisville, I was in love with Teddy, not just because of the name, but because of his actual production.
It's a good name, though.
Yeah, it is a good name. I like it. But, you know, you got guys like John Ross last year, broke the combine 40-yard dash record. Speed's great and all, but, you know, he unfortunately went to the AFC North, and that's the black and blue division, and, you know, speed's great, but when you get hit, you're going to feel it. I think what really translates from the combine to the field is these drills, you know, the 20-yard shuttle, the pass catching drills. Alvin Kamara, I'm going to bring him up again. He is right now to me, the prime example. During the pass catching drills, you saw what he did, and then it translated right with Drew Brees and Sean Payton's offense. And he was only drafted in the 4th round. And there was a guy that we even talked about on our show last offseason saying, hey, yeah, we know they picked up Adrian Peterson. We know they have Mark Ingram, but watch out for this kid because this kid is dangerous in the passing game. So you see really a lot of these drills being more of the focal point of what translates to the field. But it is nice to see how strong some of these guys are and how fast these guys are.
So, yeah, I can relate to the pass catching drills, and I think that makes a whole lot of sense because for a wide receiver, they have the one drill where they run from sideline to sideline, and they constantly have to spin, catch the football. And that's obviously, for as much as you can simulate it without pads on and without a safety trying to take your head off, that's what they have to do. They have to break out of cuts, maybe more so than they did in college, where guys are more open and quarterbacks don't anticipate as well, and they're throwing the ball to guys that they can see. But in terms of making that cut and seeing the football out of the corner of your eye and being able to catch it that quickly. And then with the running backs, you see this huge disparity between guys that you can tell were integral to their pass offense in college versus guys that just they take them off the field. And Corey Clement was a guy that they mentioned looking at last year. And even though he turned out to be a decent pass receiver and contributed to the Eagles in that way, just didn't see the football out of the backfield at Wisconsin because that was just the Wisconsin way. So you see some of these running backs for the first time be put in an awkward position, and it's kind of interesting to see how they respond.
Sure. And, and I'm glad you brought up the split second decision making, because let's be honest, and going from college to pro, the NFL, it is split second decision making. It's so fast. The game is amped up a lot. So for them to, these scouts to see how fast these guys can make a decision and catch the ball, and, do the stop and go, away from a defender, it's crucial.
So we were trying to figure out who makes these decisions on who shows up at the NFL Combine. So anybody watching out there that knows, certainly leave it in the comments to let us know. I think it's some combination of NFL player personnel, I would think, that says, we want these guys to show up, but it's usually like 350 guys, something in that range.